Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ev, and today we're going to be doing a very fun and exciting breed of the month. What is the breed of the month? I've decided to bring you guys along with me the Long Way Homestead fiber study. It's exactly 12 months, so you can sign up for it, cancel it whenever you want, but essentially for 12 months, every month you get a different type of wool in the mail in a 4-ounce roving. I'm super excited for this month's wool because it is a really interesting one. It's a type of wool that we haven't really discussed too much about, and that is actually a little sneak peeks at the months to come, but this is the one I want. This month we are actually spinning a beautiful, soft, squishy wool. This is so white and crispy. It's a very fun, like softer wool. It's not overly soft. It's not like a merino. It does feel a little bit more hairy. What I'm describing and talking to you guys about today is actually Wensleydale. Those of you who aren't familiar with Wensleydale, it is actually a long wool, which is why I say it makes sense that it feels a little bit thinner when I squish it, is because long wools tend to be a little bit heavier than your typical other wools. That's what I've discovered in spinning them. This will not be my first long wool spin. However, this is my first Wensleydale spin. Wensleydale is a long wool and lustrous and most often has a beautiful sheen to it. It also can be fairly soft and fine depending on the animal. Wensleydale wool hangs in distinct ringlet type curls and will not felt easily. It is naturally white, gray, or black. I saw that Rachel Smith, the one that she had when she spun up her Wensleydale, was gray. Wensleydale yarn works well for projects that require more strength and drape. It is beautiful yarn to use in weaving, rugs, upholstery, and for knitting. Crochet can bring clear stitch definition with a beautiful drape. The average staple length is 7 to 12 inches. It has a fiber diameter of 30 to 36 microns, so it's not the softest. The weight of the fleece is 10 to 15 pounds. Sorry, the piggies are gnawing on something. Wensleydale is actually really interesting because it can actually be traced back to one particular sheep, which is rather rare for sheep breeds. If you're familiar with the Tesswater sheep and have spun it before, we're not going to be discussing this sheep in this sheep study, I think, because we don't have it here in Canada, but the Wensleydale is really close to it, and a lot of people who spin or just by naked eye can't really tell the difference between Wensleydale and Tesswater because they're so close. Unless you work with both, there's like a few key differences, but unless you spin with both regularly, it might be a little bit hard to differentiate them. In 1839, a lamb was born in North Yorkshire to a mug ewe, an old type of Tesswater ewe that didn't show much of the Leicester influence. The offspring had the blue head and the ears that show as a recessive trait in the Leicester form from time to time, and was named Blue Cap by its owner because of the blue on the face and the head. That farmer took this lamb, that is the one sheep that we can trace back to being a Wensleydale, and bred it, and then would take those sheep and breed them again, and would always be searching for certain characteristics to keep breeding them, to really bring like this breed down to a certain type of niche, which would then become the Wensleydale. One fun fact about Wensleydale is that their skin is blue, like a deep, dark kind of black blue shade. You can see it on their face and on their ears. That is all over. It's just the hair that's a different color. Wensleydale also has really beautiful long ringlets or curled hair, and it actually grows even all over the body. When it first became popular, was kind of considered like a royalty sheep, and a lot of royals had the sheep, which then kind of led to the sheep becoming more expensive. Wensleydale is considered conservation sheep because it almost went extinct, because it is such a beautiful sheep and it is a relatively low maintenance sheep. You don't need to do too much. They're really easy to care for. They care for themselves, and they can kind of live in almost any climate. They live in like the colder climate, but they do really well whether it's humid, wet, dry. They're fine. They'll figure it out. One thing that made the Wensleydale super popular when it first became famous, it had beautiful long hair. Its hair grows even all over its body, which made the demand go up and up and up. And this kind of also made the sheep become a royalty sheep, where a lot of royals would search for this sheep and own it themselves. So the sheep kind of became like a little bit harder for regular farmers to get a hold of, and instead they just started farming different types of sheep or different breeds of sheep. There just were less and less because the demand was less and less, and the farmers couldn't afford buying them to start their own flock. Even now, the Wensleydale is still a little bit pricier than other sheep, but it is a relatively really big sheep. It takes care of itself really well. It doesn't need that much grooming or that much taking care of. And what is nice about the Wensleydale is because its hair grows even everywhere and it grows super, super long, you can actually get 2 shearings from it. You can do like a mid-year shear and then an end of the year shear, so then you can get like double the wool from your sheep. The original Wensleydale comes from the UK, and there still isn't an official Wensleydale breed here in the North America. The only way that we have them here is by sperm and bringing it across, or semen, and they use that to impregnate some of the sheep that are here. So they end up being a little bit different, and they call it upgrading a sheep because it's not like the pure line, but it becomes kind of its own line in its sense. There is no official Wensleydale in North America as of now, but they are here. All these breeds, they all have very unique characteristics, but they all intermingle and they all come from one another. It's really interesting to see what farmers or sheep herders at the time wanted to focus on so that they can call like each breed and make its own breed. I also have a really cool thing to show you guys. I was looking at my stash trying to find my Wensleydale, and then I realized I have another Wensleydale with me that is not prepped. So I have about 110, 115 grams right here that needs to be picked and then carted so that it can be turned either into a bat, either into Rolags, either into, depends how I want to prep it. I haven't gone around to it, which is why it is just a bag of wool right now. But I thought it was really cool to show you guys what the actual locks look like. It's this curly all over. Crazy, crazy curls. Because of the lack of drape, I've noticed that my personal preferences when it comes to long wool is to do a 2-ply. I think it just drapes nicer, and the more plies you add, the more ropey your yarn can tend to be. As I'm setting up my wheel to spin, one thing that I forgot to mention about long wools is the fact that because they have long staple length, they tend to have really long fluffy hairs, and that kind of adds and gives them a really nice halo. If you guys remember when I was spinning up this swatch right here, this is my Gotland from my very first sweater quantity of yarn spin. I still haven't finished that knit, but that's another discussion point. This has a beautiful halo to it. It's really fluffy, and Gotland, for example, you can kind of see it here. They call this the mohair of long wools because it looks as if you're holding a mohair with it. Do you see that lovely halo? It's just super fuzzy, and that's just the wool itself. Wensleydale is going to have this as well because it's another long wool, but people search for them because of this. At the same time, this is also one reason why a lot of people don't particularly like long wools, because it does have a little bit more prickliness to it. So it's not as soft as a kid silk mohair. It is going to be a little bit more prickly because you're going to have these hairs kind of stab at you or prick you. So if you're very sensitive, long wools might not be for you. As an outerwear, in mittens, in like an outer coat, this is super warm, super beautiful, and a really nice wool. So I'm going to be starting off with the typical ply back test and just go from there. I'm going to try not to add too much twist so that it's not ropey, but enough twist so that if I pull at it as a single, it's not just going to fall apart, because a lot of the times when you try and focus not to add twist, you'll spin it with not enough twist. I feel like I'm spinning relatively thin though. Now again, because this is a long wool, this will most likely not have any stretch to it, and I can kind of feel there's no bounce to it. This is so pretty. It's such like a fluffy, airy, light spin. It's not ropey at all. 10 wraps per inch, which I believe 14 is a fingering, 16 is a sport, 10 would be worsted. Is that how it works? I'm gonna put it here if I'm right. If I am, I'm gonna be impressed with myself. If I'm wrong, I'm not surprised. This is spinning up really, really well, but because it's pencil roving and the way it's been prepped, the staple isn't as long as it should be, or as I was showing you guys at the beginning with the black wool. It's a little bit on the shorter side, and because it's a little bit more slippery and doesn't have much bounce, it's a little different to spin. It's gonna take me a bit to get used to. So I'm just gonna pre-draft a little bit because I'm having to keep my hands together a little bit more than I normally would like to, and it's just feeling a little bit slippery, so hopefully this will help. Also, you're at 1%. Oh my God. I think this is gonna be what I'm gonna be aiming for. I'm working at a relatively slow speed, and I'm working with not that much tension on my wheel because I want it to fluff up as much as possible, but I want the wheel to still take in the yarn. This is feeling really interesting. It's a little bit more, I don't want to say ropey. It's not ropey, but it's just more rustic than the other wools I've spun so far in this fiber study. I'm touching them because they're literally right here. Like, these are the 6 other ones that we've spun up. But definitely I'm going to be aiming for this right here, this section that looks super pretty, currently sitting again at a 10 wraps per inch. So right now I'm just going to put it here. So if I ever want to look back at it, I will have my playback test. Also, this yarn loses a lot of fluffs. I love it when I can do that. I don't normally do intense close-ups this close, but would you just look at that halo and that buzz? It's kind of crazy how much it's like glowing in the light right now, right there. Look at that. Could you imagine once it's 2-plied after washing? It's just gonna bloom even more. Look at the single ply right here. All of those crazy little, why are you not focusing? Hairs. It's actually super pretty and getting me very excited for the final yarn. Normally in these fiber studies, I just take the wool and spin it on my e-spinner and then turn it into yarn, and then we discuss what that yarn feels like, what it looks like, how I feel about it, how my experience spinning the wool was. But because this month I actually have a pound of it unprepped but just washed, I thought it would be really fun to pick it together and maybe try carding it. Now, I don't have a drum carder, I just have hand carders, and I've looked a little bit into carding long wools. It's typically not accustomed to hand card long wools because they end up being longer than your combs, so they're known to be a little bit trickier, and you just want to avoid getting knots or tangling up the yarn, the wool, into tangles. So I'm going to be trying that. We're going to see how it goes. Worst case is I'm not going to card it all. I'll just give up and figure out a way to borrow a drum carder. I have contacted my local guild to borrow a drum carder from them because I want a really high TPI drum carder, and the ones on my local like Facebook Marketplace are usually 75 TPI or lower ones. And because I have some fine alpaca to card and other finer wools, I need a higher TPI. But because of the currency exchange and because of the tariffs coming in from the States, most drum carder brands are American brands. I am not going to be buying one during this period. So the wool is kind of just sitting in my wool room waiting. But yeah, so let's take a look at the Wensleydale and let's get picking. How I pick my wool is I basically just take the locks and just kind of open them, fluff them up, and make sure that there's no debris in there, there's no little knots and tangles, and kind of just pull the fiber apart. And maybe if there's second cuttings, I'll take them out. I'm pretty sure this one won't have second cuttings, but there's quite a little bit of debris in here. So it's just, yeah, letting it fall out. And this is beautiful. It's so fluffy, so squishy. It just really opens up really well. I did, however, manage to finish picking all of the 100 grams of Wensleydale. I was gonna say worsted, because I have worsted and woolen on my mind right now because I keep confusing them. Even at this stage, I'm still confusing worsted prep, woolen prep, and then worsted drafting, woolen drafting, and then on top of that, in the yarn weights, there is the worsted weight yarn. So it's just the same word, 3 different meanings. I am carding this on hand carders. My goal is to make it not tangle up. We're gonna see if I can do that. I want to get a worsted prep. Now this is where I was getting tongue twisted in my words before. The differences in fiber preps is worsted and woolen. The way Longway Homestead preps their wool is woolen because it is a pencil top roving, because it is like a roving. Woolen is when all of the fibers are all combed and organized to have the same direction, and it is also super compact, or the process of doing it just makes the fibers all in the same directions but all really, really close to one another. So that is your typical braid, your typical roving or pencil top roving. It is just your typical commercial processed yarn wool. Whereas woolen is normally drum carding, hand carding, it is rollags. It's when you brush the fibers to get them like coated, brushed together. The fibers don't all have to be in the same direction, and it is a way to have, I started one just to see if I could even do this with a long wool, but this here is what you are left with after prepping a rollag for this wool. And as you can see, I'm gonna open it. It is super airy, super fluffy and squishy, and has a lot of air. So that means that your wool, when you spin it up, it's gonna have a lot of air, a lot of bounce. It's not gonna be a stiff yarn, but it's gonna be a more flowy, bouncy, airy, squishy, lovely yarn. It's just different prep methods. Now we're just focusing on getting some lovely rollags, and I'm gonna see how many I can get. I did do another attempt afterwards with a little bit more wool to get it a little bit bigger. This one was like you can see the difference. This was too much wool on the cards. It got tangled and it got messy. So I now know, because I felt like this one was a little bit too light, but I now know because this roving, it's not extremely long, it's just a little bit longer, a few inches, than the Corriedale I was prepping for the Tour de Fleece. So basically what I'm doing is I'm putting the wool, kind of letting the teeth grab at it. I'm trying to be really gentle with these hand carders because I do want them to last me really, really long. But I also know worst case is, it is possible to change the actual carding sheet on here. This is essentially just brushing hair. That's all this is kind of doing. And I like to just hold this one like this. I found it easier to hold it as if I'm holding like a stick or something, because I just found that for me personally, the best way to hold this for long periods of time is to hold it kind of like this. I know this isn't the typical way YouTubers or hand carders show you, but I'm at home alone, so nobody knows. Well, now you know. I just brush the wool and try not to get the combs to brush too much. It's more of a flicking motion. And then I'll go and change. And then I'll repeat it again, just brushing just the tips at the bottom before making my way into the comb to really like brush the wool, because you don't want to break the wool. So you still want to be gentle with it. And then I start grabbing it a little bit off the comb, flicking at it, turning it around, and repeating the same process. There's no science to it, but I'll do this till essentially the wool is combed. And then if there's like little pieces of debris or hay that kind of just, is this a feather? There's like something here that just like stuck around. I'll just remove it. I also really like to play with the wool and feel the fibers, because I know it might resemble hair right now, but it doesn't feel hair. I don't like the feeling of hair. There's just something like human hair. If this would be my worst nightmare. But there's just, wool feels different. It doesn't feel, yeah. I would never want to do this with my own hair. Oh my God, I would die and cry. If you want to know more about hand carding or prepping worsted wool or woolen prep and then spinning with drafting worsted or drafting woolen style, I highly recommend you check out Jillian Moreno's Yarnitecture. She does go over the differences between worsted and woolen prep and then other different prep methods. And she also goes into, with images, on how to woolen draft, and I think this one's worsted. No, this is silk preparation. She also goes into worsted drafting preparation. This book has been a continuous go-to for me and a really good reference. If I'm ever a little bit confused and don't really know where to start looking, this just gives me the tools that I need to then further look for information. So I also really like having something tangible to grab onto while I'm looking. I just finished carding my wool, and I actually wanted to ask you guys, what do you do with your hand carders to store them if you have any? Because I am not going to be removing the nail at the back each time I'm putting it back to store it back inside the box that I came in, and I'm trying to like leave this laying flat and make sure I don't put anything on top to like break the tines or the little metal comb pieces sticking out. So this has just been a little bit weird to store, and they're kind of wide, and because there are two, it takes up a lot of room. So I'm curious, what is your method of storing these? As for the wool prep, here it is. Look at this beautiful black wool. It is so squishy and fluffy, and I'm always so amazed how much space this takes compared to, this is 100 grams, that's it. So like your regular skein of yarn, this is that. I did it. I spun all four. So here are the four singles, the two Wensleydale Bfl, then the two Long Way Homestead bobbins. Might I just tell you, I kind of preferred spinning single the Long Way Homestead over the Wensleydale Bfl. This one was actually the longest staple length I've ever spun in my life, and I think It was just too long for me. I now can acknowledge that and realize that it's just not my cup of tea. I don't really like having to space out my hands that much as I spin, whereas this one spun up so much better. It also kind of has such a drastic fuzz difference. Can you see the halo that is on this guy compared to this white one? Let me show you individually. It might look better, but yeah. Crazy halo on both. I'm really excited to see them plied up and washed. That is the next part, to ply and wash these, but so far I think the Long Way Homestead wins this. At least spinning single wise, Long Way Homestead wins. And I wasn't even making a competition between the two. And we're also gonna see how exactly this yarn plies. I'm really, really curious because this one doesn't feel hairy. It does feel a little bit more stringy, I guess you would call it. But I'm also super curious, if you are a spinner yourself, do you prefer short staple length, long staple length, or medium? I think I might just be becoming someone who likes medium wools, or not super soft wool, because the softer the wool, the more slippery it becomes, but also the softer the wool, I've noticed the more pilling. Soft wools, that's what happens. You want something super soft, it will most likely pill, which is annoying. Well, pill or felt. Ooh, I definitely need more attention. Ooh, this one's gonna be thin. This is gonna be a thin yarn. I doubt this is gonna bloom. This is probably gonna be super drapey. So here they are, both yarns plied. They're both super thin, like thin. I can't wait to see if they bloom or not. I know that a couple people who do spin with long wools will typically spin like a lace weight and then knit a shawl. They're known to be really good shawl yarns or really good weaving yarns. They're like really drapey, they have no bounce. Perfect for like weaving materials. I still don't really know what I'm gonna be doing with this one. And I don't know if I'm gonna add this to the final yarn project, because again, I do wanna make a project with all of my Long Way Homestead yarns. So this one's included. This one I still don't really know. We'll see. Hello, the yarn is washed, the yarn is dry, and let's talk about Wensleydale. So first off, this is the Wensleydale from Long Way Homestead. This poofed up into such an airy yarn. It's not super bouncy. Like if I keep my hand at the same place and I pull, like, do you see the bounce? It's pretty drapey. Unlike the long wools I've spun in the past, and I say that only having spun Gotland wool, this one is a lot more fuzzy and bouncy and airy. And I do think that that is because the pencil top roving was like the way it was prepped. It must have cut the staple length because the staple length was kind of short. It was like a lot shorter than the black Wensleydale, which I also have here, but we're just going to talk about the white one first because that is what this video is about. This yarn spun up really, really well. I don't know that this is exactly my favorite wool from this fiber study. I'm just in love with the result at the end. Normally I'm in love with the process of spinning the yarn. This one I didn't feel it, but seeing what it resulted in made me more in love with this fiber. This is probably one of my thinner spins in this fiber study. This is a 2-ply. I kind of expected it to not bloom more, but I just thought that I was going to be spinning a bigger spin. So this resulted in a 14 to 16 reps per inch, 14 being your traditional fingering weight yarn. This also ended up giving me 339 meters for the 4 ounce of roving that I was given. So that's quite a lot of yarn. So this is one of the bigger spins for sure, but it is a thin one. I don't think I have that much fingering weight in this fiber study as of yet. I also knit up a little swatch. So this is what it looks like. The swatch worked up super well. It was a very pleasant knit. I'm really happy with the stitch definition and how the fabric knit up. It's a pretty dense knit and you don't really see through it, but it feels super light and airy. It's definitely a warm, wispy type of knit. Being true to the long wools, it does have a nice little fuzz, a nice little halo to it. I'm pretty sure had it been a longer staple length, like kept as a longer staple length, it would have had even more of a glow and a halo. This one was knit on 2.25 millimeter needles. So this was an extremely small swatch. Because the yarn ended up being so thin, normally I spin like a worsted DK yarn. I don't know, this is so, like I keep touching it because it's so soft and distracting me. But this wool, honestly, the result, when you're working it up, don't worry about it too much. The result and the end product is phenomenon. It's phenomenal. I wasn't too sure about this video and how I was gonna end this, but today when I picked up to knit up the swatch and when I picked up the dried wool, I knew this is a very special wool, and I do understand why it might be some people's favorite long wools. Like, I do get it. As I was spinning it, I didn't really feel like, oh my God, this is amazing. It was really knitting it that made, and feeling the swatch made me realize Wensleydale is really great. As for Astrid, the Wensleydale X Bfl wool from L&R Farms WA, I think that's Washington. This is again from Melly Knits. This one was 115 grams, so this one did weigh a little bit more, but just by holding it, this yarn is heavier. This yarn is more dense, and I think that that is the traditional, typical long wools. That is what I'm missing from this one. This one, honestly, if you were to show me these two yarns in a pickup line, I would not be able to tell you that these are both similar. I mean, this one is BFL Wensleydale Cross, so it's two long wools like mixed together, so it does have a little bit of BFL characteristics in it, but I would never ever be able to tell you that these are both Wensleydale. This one's a little bit more dense. It's a little bit more heavy. I'm not moving this hand. This one has no bounce, no stretch. It's just like a stiff drapey yarn. Definitely great for looming or shawl knitting or, yeah, something very drapey. I wouldn't use this in like a sweater that really needs like the bouncy structure. This is gonna hang beautifully, but it's gonna hang. This one also has a stunning halo, a stunning fuzz, even more so, you can see it on my hand here, than the white wool. So here is my swatch for the black one. Now, I'm pretty sure you can tell it's a little bit more gapey. It's a little bit more holy and airy. And that is because I tried to knit it with the 3.25 millimeter needles that I knit the swatch. It was a headache. It was so stiff. And the yarn is so, like, it doesn't give. So it's kind of like if you ever knit with raffia and you don't have any like looseness to it. I had to upsize my needles. I had to go to 3.5 millimeter needles instead of 3.25 for the swatch. Otherwise, I was just gonna like hurt my hands and it just wasn't pleasant to knit with. So that is one thing with this yarn that is really interesting. It just gives a bigger swatch and a looser gauge. But here are both swatches. So different. Crazy. It's not only the black and the white, it's just like the whole structure of the yarn, the whole structure of the wool. Oh, it does feel like a mohair. But if you are sensitive, I definitely wouldn't suggest a long wool to put next to your neck, next to your skin. It's just a little bit prickly and it's not itchy. It's just, the moment you start sweating, you're gonna be uncomfortable. So here are both yarns skeined up. One more thing I wanna point out about Wensleydale is it is silky, but it is not matte at all. It kind of has a really nice sheen to it or shine to it. The black one a little bit more, and I think that's because of the BFL, but it's very not matte. Which is something to keep in mind when knitting, like working up with yarns. Some yarns are really matte, like the Targhee was really, really matte, but this one kind of has like a natural little shine to it, and it just reflects the light ever so slightly. which is also really nice with the fuzz. It's kind of like a good, more like a little pizzazz added to it. Hopefully the camera can pick it up. I did have to close my curtains because it is so sunny right now. So I am sitting in the shade, so it might not be the best time of day to show you guys the shine of this yarn. In the end, Wensleydale was a surprising success. I was ready to tell you guys that I was very disappointed in it and it didn't really wow me, but honestly, the swatch won me over. It is super, super soft and really opening my eyes to Wensleydale a little bit more. I definitely think that out of this fiber club for now, the Ile-de-France has been my go-to. Ile-de-France Polypay, beautiful. Shetland, I'm still upset with, and I think I'll be upset with till I try it again one more time. If you are searching to expand your fiber knowledge and try some long wools and you haven't already, I suggest trying Wensleydale first because it is a really nice one. And I do understand why people prefer this one out of all the long wools. It is a really good surprise. Like, it surprised me in the end. And what more would you want from a yarn, you know, than a little surprise? Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this month's Breed of the Month fiber study. I hope you got to discover a new fiber breed along with me. And let me know if you have any questions about the wool, about spinning in general, in the comment section down below. I will try my best to answer. If not, let me know what you're spinning on. I'm really, really curious. What is your current spinning fiber? And I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye!